The Parliament of Ghana has today reacted to calls by 3 anti-corruption agencies for the House to allow an external body to investigate it, saying the call is welcoming, but the House is concerned about how their rules permit it. The Ghana Integrity Initiative (GII), together with the Ghana Center for Democratic Development (CDD Ghana) and the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition (GACC), in a joint statement argued that an external body handling the most recent allegation could be a sure way Parliament can dispel notions that members are corrupt. Members of the Finance Committee in the 6th Parliament are accused of receiving monies from the National Lottery Authority as they worked on a lottery bill. But speaking to Joy News, Director of Public Affairs for Parliament, Kate Addo, said addressing the legal bottleneck on its appropriateness could be the main challenge.
This is not the best news that any institution would like to, receive on any kind of day. So obviously, any news that seeks to, put Parliament in a not so good state, especially where the citizens that the Parliament represents are concerned, is a matter of major concern to the institution of Parliament. But you see, the institution of Parliament is a human one. It's an evolving one. Every day we learn new things. So these are things that inform, our subsequent actions or inactions. So while we see the negatives, we also see the positives in these experiences. Ghanaians have become very, very discerning. You can no longer, just give anything to Ghanaians and expect that they will take it hook, line, and sinker. Questions will be asked. So as representatives of the people, we are being made more aware of the fact that any action or inaction by the institution of Parliament and by the membership of Parliament will be questioned by Ghanaians. So we are looking at the glass as being rather half full than rather half empty.
There are some who say it's not wrong to even look at it as half empty if we have to go by that. The reason being that with the current developments, it's something that's happened sometime in 2016. So it has been a long time. So it means that there could perhaps be other incidents that may have happened that are just not in the public domain. How do you react to that?
You see, I must also put on record that parliamentary procedures and traditions are such that you cannot hold a parliament liable for the actions of a previous parliament. Now, you rightly said this happened in 2016. It was in the life of a 6th parliament under different leadership and a different speakership. Now, we are in the 7th parliament. Ordinarily, what will happen is that the 7th parliament will not even comment on actions of the 6th parliament at all, especially in terms of taking concrete decisions. But we also recognize that allegations of corruption or perceptions of corruption is not something that you want to sweep under the carpet, and that's not what we have sought to do. We recognize the challenges that the kind of assistance that the NLA gave to the committee presents to Parliament, and the work that the committees do. We also recognize that the NLA is not the only organization that has offered this kind of help to a committee. Now, having recognized and accepted all these facts, there's a need for introspection, which is still ongoing. But what also it means is that going forward, must committees accept any kind of assistance from anybody for whatever reason? Obviously, the answer will be no. So, like I said earlier, it's a learning curve and a very good experience for us.
You talked about the 7th Parliament commenting on activities of the 6th Parliament. 3 anti-corruption groups are making a case. They are saying that it is in the interest of Parliament for the first time to open its doors, allow another body to be set up to cleanse Parliament of its image. They are saying that in the case of Honorable Mama Yariga and Boache Jaku, it appears people were not happy with the outcome or felt at ease that this was what was actually supposed to have come out. Is it something that Parliament is interested in? Let me, if I have to put it that way.
It's a bit prejudicial if you ask me. If people, already had conclusions before the work of the committee, the independent committee that was set up, internal, independent, or other committee that was set up.
The concern was that in this case there was an allegation, there was a denial. So you had 2 members of the House on opposing sides. So definitely they had to.
Let me explain how the system in Parliament works. When an issue like that comes up, it is raised by a member on the floor of the House. The Speaker's attention obviously is drawn to it. The Speaker will refer it to the Privileges Committee. In that matter, the chairman of the Privileges Committee was also one of the people involved. So the Speaker, in his wisdom, set up a committee that was independent of the body that would usually have worked on the matter. Now, what I think you're referring to is the fact that people thought that it should be an outside body. Parliament is the master of its own rules. Parliament conducts its business in the manner that the rules and procedures and precedents allow it to. And the law or the rules in Parliament is in the bosom of the Speaker. So the Speaker, in consultation with the leadership, determines how things will be done. Do we think that a call for an outside independent body is necessary? I mean, what is there not to gain for people scrutinizing the work of Parliament? There's everything to be gained for us. And in fact, in many ways than one, Ghanaians and individual organizations have, done their work on us and have, reported variously on activities in Parliament. So that necessarily is not an issue that Parliament should be averse to. But what we have to also consider is the fact that in all these, the activities must be posited in the context of our parliamentary processes and rules. Once that is done, I don't think that there should be any kind of problem whatsoever by anybody using any avenue, to interrogate the work of Parliament.
But that seems to be, you've talked about the rules yourself.
Conjecture.
So it's something that Parliament is open to?
I mean, it's a possibility, and it's a very good possibility. So don't at this point, don't let us, start conjecturing what can happen, what cannot happen. The fact that calls are being made is an indication that our democracy is growing. People are showing interest in Parliament. Are we ready? Is it time for an external body to, examine the work of Parliament or allegations against Parliament? That is something that lies in the bosom of the Speaker. At the appropriate time, I'm sure the Speaker will come out and give specific instructions if he feels the need for you to do that for what has.
That was Head of Public Affairs of Parliament, Kate Addo, there in conversation with Joy News' Joseph Akable. Now, still with the business of Parliament, the Right to Information Bill, the Postal Packet and Interception Bill are but a few ones that many Ghanaians have anticipated should have been passed by now. First, to empower Ghanaians to demand information from public officers and to help government fight crime. But over the years, there seems to be some inertia on the part of members of Parliament for this to be done. So today we ask, what is the problem? My colleague Beatrice Edu has been speaking to Suleiman Ibrahima, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. He is of the opinion that Parliament is just not committed to passing the bill.
Well, one must definitely be concerned when pieces of legislation such as one that will grant access to citizens to be able to have assert that fundamental right of accessing information takes such a long time to get passed by the people who have been elected to represent the interest of the citizenry. Governments upon governments have been talking about the need for transparent governance, promises about accountability, promises about fighting corruption, and so on and so forth. But in my view, perhaps the most fundamental piece of legislation that would help in the fight against corruption, would help mobilize citizens to be involved in governance, and would help citizens to be active in the governance processes is the Right to Information Law. Now, governments upon governments have talked about, well, governance is not about the people who have been elected, the president and the ministers and so on and so forth, and that governance is about the people. Now, if governance is about the people, then of course people need information, people need to be knowledgeable, people need to be informed to be able to make whatever contributions they have to make. But if we are in a situation where citizens don't have that legal right to be able to say, I am applying to get this information, and the people who must provide it are legally obliged to do so, then of course I don't think that the governments have always taken us serious. And that also goes back to the people that we have elected, to represent us in Parliament, because they have the power to make the laws, to pass laws, and so on and so forth. So it's obviously disturbing.
So you don't think that there is enough commitment despite the assurances?
I think that if there was that commitment, it would have been passed by now, even though sometimes we've had parliamentarians say, well, it is also because of the way civil society has behaved over the years that, well, a draft will go to Parliament and civil society will protest and say it's not good enough, and therefore it comes back to civil society for inputs and then it goes back. But with where we got to, I remember it was on the last day of the last parliament that the then majority, now minority, were pushing that the bill should be passed on that day. And I was wondering, if it was at a stage where it could have been passed, why should it wait till the very, very last day, you know, of parliament for it to be pushed to be passed? And that for me is a betrayal of commitment. Perhaps it was just to do something to show that, well, as MPs we are concerned, or as majority at that time we are concerned. And then I was also wondering why the minority at that time also resisted. Well, the new administration has made promises that the bill will be passed before the end of this year. I, at this stage, haven't seen or heard any work being done, because with the new administration, what it means is that it has to go back to the Attorney General, it has to go back to Cabinet before it comes back to Parliament. And if indeed it was going to be passed before the end of this year, I'm sure that we would have seen some processes already taking place.
Mr. Brima, it is true that it's taking more than 10 years to get this bill passed, but as of December 2016, if I remember correctly, there were about 24 amendments to be made to this particular bill. Don't you agree that they actually must do a thorough job before they pass it?
Well, that is right, but what is also true is that we are not seeking to reinvent the wheel as a country. There are international best practices. Right to information legislation is not something that only Ghana is seeking to introduce. Around the world, there have been so many countries that have adopted right to information law. In fact, the Swedish right to information law has been more than 200 years. So it's not a new thing, and we operate common law, the common law system, and Nigeria operates the same law system. And in 2011, Nigeria passed their right to information law. Liberia did same in 2011. Sierra Leone has done it in 2012. And around us in Cote d'Ivoire, in Burkina Faso, all these countries have passed right to information law. So we have the standards already. And yes, there must be that scrutiny, but I think that if our MPs, if our elected representatives really appreciated the importance of giving citizens the fundamental rights to access information legally, I'm sure it wouldn't have taken that long to do the scrutiny.
Suleiman Brima there, Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa. Now, on the other hand, the Programs Director for the Ghana Integrity Initiative, Mary Ada, believes government has done enough, and she is looking forward to seeing the bill passed soon.
Let me say we are a little apprehensive because we have had assurances of similar nature in the past, and the coalition has waited and waited and waited over a decade to get this bill passed. But however, let me also quickly say that because of the stage which the RTI bill got to in Parliament, in the last Parliament, we are, even though apprehensive, hopeful that we would get it passed in the tenure of this Parliament. As to whether it will be passed this year is the other issue. But then we hope that it is done, because we are hoping so, because we had a president who campaigned that that would be one of the first laws he would have passed. And so we are holding the president to that promise, and we continuously remind him. Recently, civil society organizations who concentrate on governance issues met with the president, and that was one of the issues we put across. And the promise was made again that the law would get passed. But then we know that political talk and action are different things. Usually they say one thing and do the other. So we wait to see. But we are very sure that in this current Parliament, the law would get passed. It is not just the RTI. There are many other laws which we need passed if we are going to fight corruption effectively.
Indeed, and I was coming to that, especially the Interception of Postal Packets and Telecommunication Messages Bill. That's also a very relevant bill, looking at the kind of society we are in now, terrorism, trafficking. Sometimes the argument is that you're over-concentrating on RTI when there are some other important bills that also need to be passed.
Exactly. Apart from that, we know the YOCO, the FIC, that's the Financial Intelligence Center, are doing some fantastic jobs around the money laundering issue, around the getting information accessible online and also through posts. Unfortunately, our laws as they stand do not support them to do their work very well. But let me say quickly that on that front, FIC is doing a brilliant job as the Financial Intelligence Center. Their mandate, apart from working to ensure that finance intelligence is upheld in Ghana, they also work closely with the YOCO to ensure that financial crimes are not perpetuated.
Now, you talked about enough talk about the RTI as well as some other bills. Do you think is needed to ensure that the RTI as well as other important bills are passed as soon as possible?
Thank you. What we expect to see is action, because usually the rhetoric is too much, and we have complained about that in the past. So now we want to see commitments as to action plans. We want this bill passed. By December, it should be passed. Then the president gives the opportunity to Parliament, so the processes should be put in place. And these processes which are triggered should be seen to be working. We should see Parliament already having the bill returned to them. I know for a fact that the AG has made some inputs into the RTI, particularly the conduct of public officers and also the witness protection bill. These have started, that process has started, and it's supposed to go to cabinet. At the level of cabinet, they also go through to make their inputs. Then it goes back to Parliament. We should have some timelines, agreed timelines, based, if even they are even tentative, but then that shows commitment, that the people who are put in places of governance who are supposed to help us facilitate and promote the fight against corruption are seen as doing something. So the timelines are critical.
Mary Ada of the Ghana Integrity Initiative there, speaking with my colleague Beatrice Edu. Now, the missing handbag belonging to the quiz mistress of the National Science and Maths quiz, Dr. Elsie Kaufman, is yet to be found. Contrary to some reports in sections of the media, the stolen bag has been found. A visit to the East Legon police station revealed Dr. Kaufman reported the missing bag on Thursday at 6:55 p.m. Among some of the missing items are gold earrings, an unspecified amount of money, driver's license, Samsung Galaxy phone, ID cards, and a bunch of keys. Dr. Kaufman's bag was stolen some minutes after the declaration of the 2017 winners of the National Science and Maths quiz. She had moved from her seat to present the trophy to the winners of the quiz, Prempeh College. Still live on Joy News today. We have more stories ahead of us. Stay tuned. Thanks for staying with us. Now, an overhead footbridge is often added to very busy roads to prevent pedestrian knockdowns. Most of these bridges in Accra have, however, been ignored by the same pedestrians it was made for, exposing them to great risks as they sometimes dash across these highways. Shanice Palm has been exploring the phenomenon in the following report.
Footbridges are constructed mainly to make it easy for pedestrians to move from one side of usually a very busy road to the other. This mechanism is to ensure pedestrians are not run over indiscriminately by moving vehicles. Unfortunately, construction of some footbridges in some parts of the city have stalled for many years. Some pedestrians at the Medina Zongo Junction have been left no choice but to cross the road, putting their lives at risk.
It is very important that they come to do the overpass. They started it and have left it for 8 years now, and results in pedestrians getting knocked down by cars every day. It is true. It has kept very long, and they have not done it.
The road safety engineer of the Urban Roads Department says work has stalled on most of these bridges due to lack of funds to complete them.
And mainly if
such contracts have not been completed, it could be due to a lot of reasons. One, it could be financial, and two, it could be some contractual agreements that are not met. But I think for that section, it could be financial.
Meanwhile, other parts of the city are fortunate to have the bridges completed. But then, some pedestrians still consider crossing the road a better option. The excuses include time spent on using the bridge and aching joints.
Unlike the Madina-Zongo junction, where the footbridge has been abandoned, here at the Malam market, the footbridge has been completed, but most pedestrians prefer to cross the road without the use of the footbridge.
I think it's ignorance, like they don't have knowledge of it, and if you tell them, they won't listen either. And it's very dangerous to do that. That is why government did this platform for us to pass on, but it's like they won't listen.
I think maybe they are not used to the footbridge, and they are used to crossing the road, so they want to do the old things. Do you get it? And I think it should be used. It should be used, though it seems far, but for their own safety.
The Road Safety Commission is stepping up efforts to enforce laws meant to ensure pedestrians use the footbridges.
As per the law, Regulation 154, Section 3, states clearly that if a pedestrian fails to use a footbridge where provided or an underpass where provided, it's an offense. And you can be imprisoned. You can also be fined. You can be imprisoned, I think, not less than 3 months. You can also pay a fine between 25 to 50 penalty units, and one penalty unit is 12 Ghana cedis. So I can remember that at the beginning of this year, we collaborated with the police MTTD, visited some of these locations, the footbridges, then tried as much as possible to put this particular law into action. And at the end of the day, we were able to educate so many people, we were able to sensitize people, we were able to tell them the importance of using the footbridge.
Shanice Palms report for Joy News.
Now, Ghana has the potential of becoming a food hub in the West African sub-region and beyond. Agriculturist Kofi Mafo believes not only can Ghana feed itself, it can also position itself as a major supplier of food to neighboring countries. How is this possible? Mr. Mafo has been explaining to Joy News' Adelaide Arthur.
If you look at the northern sector, we have Burkina Faso, followed by Mali, Niger, that are all Sahelian, with very depraved lands and the weather. And in Ghana, where we are positioned, we should be in a position to supply them with virtually all their food requirements, especially the grains. And that is why I think that Ghana has not taken up the potential that needs to be taken to set us on the center stage for food production and supply to these countries.
So what exactly are we not doing right?
It's a compendium of issues. We have not sat down to know what we have in the first place. You know, most of the grains are short-term gestation periods, between 70, some as low as 75 days to about 3 months. And so we're talking of the maize, we're talking of the cowpeas, we're talking of various vegetables. And so if we are able to say that, look here, this is what we want to do, this is how we plan it, these are the groups responsible for it, and these are our markets, I am sure that in a very short period of time, Ghana will position itself to be a major supplier of food to some of these countries.
Now, he opines government's Planting for Food and Jobs initiative, though commendable, has some loose knots that should be tightened in order for the policy to benefit farmers and those along the value chain.
We must concentrate specific products for specific areas. Things are done haphazardly, pepper here, tomato there, I don't think it will help. A particular area must focus on something. Let me give you a good example. You look at the Adan, Kita, Volta region, the soils are shallow, sandy soils, and you see that shallots, Jenny, small, that is not onion, that is, we call them shallots. It does very well. And if you look at the property, for instance, of shallots and what it does, you couple it with some herbs, you can have a whole factory and a whole plantation of shallots. You get to a certain region, if it is maize, it is maize. You get here, if it is cabbage, it is cabbage. And within that threshold, you have a small processor, packaging factory. And so when it is leaving those areas, it is for export or whatever. So you have little groups of businesses, 2-3 people, you know, doing an acre, 2-3 people who are giving contracts to produce, you know, certain quantities to certain specific specifications, because we're talking of quality. And so a whole district is concentrating on one product. Then we have that quantum, that threshold volume. And within that ambience of environment, you are able to work on the quality control issues.
Now, still on agriculture, some fishermen in the central region are calling on governments to crack the whip on some fishermen who are still using unorthodox methods of fishing. According to the fishermen, it is not fair for some fishermen to host the unhealthy fishing methods, only for some of their colleagues to continue engaging in it. At a news conference at Winneba, the fishermen expressed disgust about how some fishery stocks are being depleted. Richard Kojonyako has more.
The fight to improve the methods of fishing by fishermen appears to be yielding results, as many communities along the coastal belt of the country have vowed not to continue using illegal fishing methods, while some of the coastal communities have gone to the extent of pouring libation for calamities to befall any fisherman who uses light and other unapproved methods and activities in fishing. Others have resorted to policing themselves to ensure that such vows are rigidly adhered to. At Winneba, the fishermen who have agreed to end the use of illegal fishing methods are not pleased with some of their colleagues who are still in their old ways of fishing. The fishermen want government to exert a similar effort that has been put in fighting the galamsey menace, lest the fishing stocks are depleted.
Yadoma Tamafo Waba Basolatino. Yadamasa Moyan Seka Damasamana, Fitches and Wabanaka, and a Wabu Yasan,
we did not use light for fishing. We decided we weren't going to do that. I have gone for a loan. Others have also gone for loans. We are suffering. Why are we not using the Navy boat bought by the before administration to fight the menace? Government has been able to stop the galamsey. Why can't government focus on stopping illegal fishing practices?
Kufuwa president kufuwa ba yobe 8 years or the David boat to buy on a boat to near Gutamabo or Gusakani Abo. How about into the boat to one for group and one away the management, one jet throw one. I bay stop Galamseno. How much more there? I bay on to more stop 1 hour of Messi before. Yeah, you for your woman young couple. About it on stop I feel Baba Diamoko. I feel Mama Diamoko. Yang Dama, a young Dachi.
These are future. This is what we have for our children. We need to protect it. What we want government to do is to stop the use of dynamite and lighting fishing. Government has all the powers to do this. We have not been using DDT, dynamite and lighting fishing. Why is it that we are looking on for others to use these in their fishing activities? The Development Action Association, a partner in the Sustainable Fisheries Management Project that is spearheading the fight to sanitize and regulate the fishing activities in the country, want the Ministry of Fisheries to fashion out an urgent solution to protecting the fishery stock, since the livelihoods of tens of thousands of people along the coast are dependent on the sea. Lydia Sasu is Executive Director of the Development Action Association.
Our main objective is to rebuild the stock, because we've realized that women are also have to benefit. If there's no fish, then there's poverty.
Richard Kojonyako's reports there. Now, it is said that all laws can be summarized into 3 laws, and one of them is the right of the wise to exploit the foolish as long as they do so legally. It is for this reason that legal practitioner Nana Opon authored iLegal, a book meant to enlighten Ghanaians. Speaking at the launch of the book, the lawyer, who also practices in Canada, explains the book is meant to reduce the high rates of legal illiteracy amongst citizens so they are empowered.
I feel really bad when I see a lot of people doing business, engaging in relationships where they don't understand their rights, they don't understand the rules, and they're just being taken advantage of. So this is a book that really is supposed to empower people, enlighten them, and set them free. It's a book that would give them the light, as it were, so they understand, oh, this is how to think about issues, this is how to decide, this is how to go forward, this is how judges think, this is how courts work. So in a way, it gives them the navigational tools to understand all of that. And then plus, before they go to court, before they get issues, they can program their lives to minimize the chances that they will lose, the risk of failure in law. So essentially, when you read this book and you really understand it, you'll be smarter, wiser, more strategic, so you avoid all those loopholes and problems and things that will lead you to court.
Emmanuel Abuaje,